The fire didn't roar, it screamed. It tore through the night as if the world were burning from the inside, devouring wood, memories, and silences that would never return. And in the middle of that hell, Thomas Valverde, volunteer firefighter, fell to his knees in front of the charred skeleton of his own house, watching how the flames he had fought his whole life were taking away the only thing that truly belonged to him. The smoke burned his eyes, but what shattered his soul was the silence. No neighbors, no help, no headlights approaching on the road, just him and a home turned to ash. But what Thomas didn't know was that that night would not end in loss, but with something no one would have believed possible. Something that would arrive with the roar of many engines. Stay till the end, because this story proves there are brotherhoods capable of lifting a man even when everything else has been reduced to dust. Thomas lived on the outskirts of the county, on a piece of land that seemed forgotten by time and by any god that might have passed through there once. A place where the pines grew twisted by the wind and where the road, a gray, cracked line, wound silently along with almost no car daring to travel it, as if even travelers knew that that corner of the world had nothing to offer except solitude. Every morning, Thomas got up before the sun, made coffee in a coffee pot that had lost its shine decades ago, and patted the head of his old dog, a tired animal that still followed him everywhere, before climbing into his truck, a relic that spewed more smoke than it burned gasoline, to head to the rusty workshop where he patched up machines as worn out as himself. He had been a volunteer firefighter for 12 years, and even though no one asked him to, even though no one recognized him, he kept responding to every call because it was the only way he knew to still feel useful, still feel alive, since that night when he lost his wife and decided to build with his own hands a modest house, plank by plank, as if each nail were a way of keeping her close, even if only in spirit. That home was his refuge, his memory, his anchor, the only place where the shadows of the past didn't reach him. But that night, the wind changed without any warning. It turned like a wounded animal and dragged sparks that seemed to come from the very edge of hell. The fire that had initially burned far away, small, contained, turned within minutes into a wild creature that devoured bushes, trunks, and sky, advancing with a hunger that made you shudder. Thomas saw it coming from the hillside, an orange glow that grew too fast, and although he ran toward his house with the tools he had, although he fought with everything he had learned in so many years of service, you cannot fight hell when you are alone, when there is no one else holding the hose, when the wind blows against you as if it wanted to push you into the flames. The walls he had put up with his own hands began to creak, to bend, to disappear under the burning embrace of the fire. And when the last wall collapsed with a roar that pierced his chest, a brutal certainty settled in his mind. There was nothing left to save, no furniture, no memories, no life he had tried to rebuild. And then dawn came, slow and gray, dragging with it a smell of ash that mixed with the cold humidity of the morning, a smell that seemed to cling to the skin and made each breath hurt like a confession. It was in that silence, while the embers went out and the ground still trembled with the heat of the disaster, that Thomas saw something strange. Marks in the mud, deep, recent, perfectly defined, as if several heavy motorcycles had passed through there during the night, stopping in front of his house while he was too busy trying to save it to notice. He crouched down, ran his fingers over the tracks, felt the moisture still fresh, and then the question was born on its own, quick, inevitable, driving itself into his mind with more strength than the very pain of the fire. Who had been there just before dawn? Thomas followed the trail, with confusion cutting through his chest like a hot iron, moving slowly through the mix of mud, ash, and silence that remains after a fire when there is nothing alive left to burn, only resigned embers and a dense air that seems to want to say something. The damp ground showed with brutal clarity the tracks of several heavy motorcycles, deep parallel marks that could only belong to gigantic Harleys, machines that vibrate like animals made of steel and that never go unnoticed in the night. And yet he had seen nothing, heard nothing, no engine, no headlight, no roar that could explain how the hell they had gotten there without him noticing, while he fought desperately against the hell that was devouring his house. As he walked through what was left of his life, smoking remains, blackened beams, pieces of wall that still creaked like broken bones, something else caught his attention. Footprints. They were not the footprints of curious neighbors or volunteers who had come to help. They were firm, broad steps, marked by boots that had traveled miles of road, the kind of footprints left by men accustomed to carrying their own weight, their own silence, and sometimes the lives of others. Near those marks, he saw a gas can, but full, perfectly intact, as if someone had thought of helping and then had to leave too quickly. On a rock, he found something even stranger, a folded blanket, completely clean, protected from the ash, placed with a care that made no sense for someone who had just passed by without intention. Someone had been there. Someone had seen the fire, had witnessed his misfortune, and not only had stayed long enough to watch, but also to leave something behind, as if they had been watching him from the shadows, as if they had wanted to prevent him from freezing to death after losing everything. That thought shook him more than the wind itself. The smell of wet leather still floated in the air, faint but impossible to ignore, mixing with the ash and smoke that continued to rise from the embers. It was a smell that did not belong to the place, a smell that brought with it road, rain, distance, men who sleep little and ride a lot. And then, before he could stop it, an idea tore through him like lightning, ripping open a dark sky. What if these weren't just ordinary bikers? Thomas had heard stories in old bars, in forgotten gas stations, tales murmured by truckers and war veterans, whispers that spoke of a group of men who appeared when justice failed, when loneliness became too heavy for one human being. Stories that seemed exaggerated, almost mythical, about bikers who did not seek fame, nor money, nor gratitude, but something deeper, a code, a way of being in the world that very few understood. But as he looked at those tracks, as he smelled that scent, as the dawn lit up the ruins of his house, he understood that nothing he had heard could have prepared him for what was coming, because they were not stories, they were not rumors, They were real, and they were getting closer. The afternoon fell silent, thick, as if the world had decided to hold a minute of silence for what Thomas had lost. And he, exhausted from the previous night and from the unbearable weight of desolation, dozed, sitting among the remains of his home, with his head bowed and his hands still covered in soot. The wind blew softly, moving ashes that floated in the air like black snow. And in that almost hypnotic sway, Thomas was about to fall asleep when a sound tore him suddenly from his lethargy. A distant engine, deep, low, the kind of roar that doesn't belong to a car or a pickup, but to something wilder. And then another came, and another, and then many more. The roar multiplied, growing like a storm made of steel and road, a chorus of machines that rumbled in the ground before becoming visible. Thomas jumped to his feet, heart racing, and looked toward the road just as a column of motorcycles emerged from between the trees, moving slowly, with headlights cutting through the dying light of the sunset and lighting up the ash as if they were giving life back to a dead landscape. The colors on their vests shone with an almost ritual aura, dark tones, symbols of respect, of history, of a name everyone knew but no one mentioned without lowering their voice a little. There was no doubt they belonged to a big solid club, a brotherhood that did not make visits without a reason. Even so, their arrival was not violent or threatening. On the contrary, each bike stopped with calculated calm, as if their sheer presence, imposing and silent, were enough for the world to understand that they were there for a purpose that carried the weight of its own code. When they cut the engines, a deep silence filled the scene, a silence that was not uncomfortable, but solemn, as if everyone were waiting for something. The first to dismount was the leader, a huge man with broad shoulders and a gray beard that seemed to hold as many stories as the wrinkles around his eyes. His steps were heavy but steady, and when he removed his helmet, Thomas felt the air change, as if the temperature dropped and something ancient stepped into the moment. The leader looked at him for a few seconds that felt eternal, with eyes that had not only seen too many winters, but too many losses, too many brothers buried, too many nights that are never forgotten. And when he spoke, his voice was like an old engine, deep, rough, loaded with scars and meaning. "We know who you are, Thomas," he said, without raising his voice, but with a tone that didn't need volume to impose itself. "We know what you lost last night. Nobody fights fire alone, not while we're still alive." Thomas felt the words cut through him. He didn't know what to answer, not even what to think. He had never spoken to them, and yet there they were, in front of him, as if they had been following his story long before the flames took his house. He tried to say something, but nothing came out. His throat was closed, his mind too slow to grasp the magnitude of what he was witnessing. Then the leader, without losing that unsettling calm, extended his hand and pointed toward the back of one of the bikes, a black machine with red details that looked like it had just come out of hell. Thomas turned his head, not knowing what to expect, and what he saw made his heart lurch brutally. In that instant, before the smoke had even completely cleared, his world changed for the second time in less than 24 hours. If you believe loyalty still has value, subscribe to Hell's Road, because stories like this are far from over. The bikers began to dismount from their machines with a synchronicity that, more than simple coordinated action, seemed like an ancient ritual passed down from generation to generation. A wordless language understood only by those who know what it means to carry the responsibility of a brother and the memory of those who are no longer here. Some went straight to the back of the bikes to unload tools that gleamed with the reflection of the sunset. Others brought down heavy metal boxes scarred by the blows of distant journeys. And others spread waterproof tarps over the blackened ground, preparing a space where the work could begin without interruptions, without waiting for orders, moving as if each one knew exactly what his role was. Every gesture had a precise purpose, an exactness that is not rehearsed but lived. Every glance between them was a silent understanding, a confirmation that they all shared the same weight on their shoulders. It was clear that this brotherhood was not bound by chance or convenience, but by a code engraved in flesh and road. A code that is not learned, it is honored. The leader, after watching his men work in an almost ceremonial silence, approached Thomas with the confidence of someone who has made difficult decisions far too many times in his life. He looked at the remains of the house, the fallen walls, the burned beams, the soot embedded in every surface, and then he spoke with a calm that had more strength than any shout. "We're going to rebuild it," he said. "Not as it was, but better." Thomas felt the air catch in his throat. He could not understand why these men, strangers until that very day, were there offering him something that neither the county, nor the neighbors, nor even life itself had ever given him: a second chance. He did not even know their names, and yet they were ready to raise his home again as if it were one of their own, as if the fire that had destroyed it had also become the fire that united them. The colors on their backs, worn embroidery, patches hardened by the sun, symbols that had seen more roads and more nights than any ordinary man, did not seem like simple decorations. They were armor, insignias of a loyalty that did not break for anything, symbols of a bond that no fire could consume or erase. That spirit, that essence of brotherhood and resilience that they carried with the quiet pride of those who do not seek applause, is something anyone can carry too. That same spirit, that same code sewn into leather and lived in every mile, is present in the official Hell's Road merch, available at the link below for those who understand what it means to stand back up even when everything around you has collapsed. The preparation ended little by little, not with an announcement, but with the focused silence that comes before the extraordinary. The bikers moved into position. The tools waited on the tarps, And then, under the cold light of the afternoon and the persistent smell of ash, the impossible began. For endless hours, hours that seemed to stretch as if time itself wanted to bow before the determination of those men, the bikers worked under the distant cold light of a moon, hanging in the sky like a station, casting a pale glow over the ruins that revealed every scar on the ground and every piece of life the fire had consumed, while their shadows, long, dense, almost ghostly, moved among the smoking remains with the precision and solemnity of an army that knows better than anyone the weight of destruction and the urgent need to rebuild. They did not speak because there was no need, and that absence of words, far from being uncomfortable, created an almost sacred atmosphere where concentration and effort seemed to blend with something deeper, a kind of mutual respect among men who understood better than most the fragility of everything one tries to protect in life. And so they raised new beams where before there had only been charred frames, cleared piles of rubble with firm, meticulous gestures, installed windows that reflected the night like mirrors full of promises, and reinforced walls that Thomas could never have afforded on his own, not in this world nor the next, which made every hammer blow, every cut, every lifted plank sound like a new heartbeat in a heart learning to beat again. Thomas watched it all from a corner, his clothes still soaked with soot and his eyes burning more from emotion than exhaustion. Unable to fully comprehend how it was possible that a group of strangers, men he had never seen, men he had only heard rumors about whispered in gas stations and roadside bars, were dedicating their night, their effort, and parts of their lives to rebuilding what he had lost, as if what the fire had destroyed belonged to them as well. And yet, the moment he could never erase from his memory, the instant that would remain engraved in him with the sharpness of an emotional tattoo impossible to remove, came when one of the bikers, digging through the blackened remains of the living room, made a gesture that caught the attention of the others. Together, as if they all shared the same intuition, they pushed aside broken beams, charred planks, and concrete blocks, until, finally, a metal box emerged from beneath the dust, twisted by the heat, blackened until it looked like coal, but still solid, still intact in what mattered, as if it had survived out of sheer will, or because something inside it refused to disappear. They carried it toward Thomas with the solemnity of someone holding something sacred, opening it with calloused but gentle hands, wiping the soot away with their fingers as if that simple act, that gesture of cleaning the dirt, was also a way of giving dignity back to the memory it contained. And when at last the lid gave way with a soft but definitive sound, the air around them seemed to stop, suspended in a silence so deep that even the crackling of the embers seemed to respect it. Inside, carefully protected, were the last pieces of Thomas's past, his wife's journals, still readable despite the stains, the photographs where she smiled with that light that had always held him up, and a small silver necklace she wore every Sunday, an object so simple and so loaded with meaning that seeing it there, among ash and burnt metal, felt like the full weight of an entire life falling on him all at once, breaking him inside in a way he wasn't sure would ever heal. His knees gave way, not from physical weakness, but because the mix of relief, pain, nostalgia, loss, and gratitude became too heavy to bear standing, and he fell to the ground as a burning knot formed in his throat, unable to hold back the tears that came with the force of something that had been trying for far too long not to come out. In that moment, without hurry, without speaking first, the leader walked over and knelt beside him, placing a huge, rough hand, marked by years and by the road, on his shoulder. And in that hand, in that simple gesture, there was more comfort than in any words another man could have said, though his voice still came, deep, worn down by life, and full of meaning. Fire can take everything, brother, except what you keep alive inside you. And so, under that moon that still shone over the ruins, Thomas understood that that night he had survived something bigger than a fire. He had survived loneliness. He had been seen, accompanied, lifted up, and that hell he had believed eternal stopped being a place and slowly became a memory that was finally beginning to lose its power. When the sun finally broke over the horizon and began to spill its warm light over the blackened forest, Thomas felt that this morning was not like the others, because for the first time since the fire had taken everything from him, he was not standing in front of ruins turned into a scar, but in front of a reborn home, a refuge rebuilt by hands that owed him nothing and yet had treated him like a brother, giving back not only walls and a roof, but a sense of belonging he thought buried since his wife's death. And there, surrounded by the smell of fresh wood, by clean windows that reflected the sunrise, and by the warm silence left behind by miracles once they're fulfilled, Thomas discovered that he also had something else, an improvised family, a reason to breathe again without the weight of the world crushing his chest, the certainty that even in the most remote places, even in the darkest nights, there is always a chance that life will surprise you with a second opportunity. The bikers, as silent as always, began to mount their Harleys one by one, without rush, without unnecessary ceremony, starting the engines with that deep, low sound that seemed to awaken a sleeping giant beneath the earth, a roar that was not noise but its own language, a message etched into the air like a promise that brotherhood does not disappear when the lights go out, but keeps riding, always alert, always present for whoever needs it. The leader, before putting his helmet on, looked at Thomas one last time with those eyes hardened by endless winters, but still capable of a disarming warmth, and he stepped close enough for his words to become an indelible mark on Thomas's soul. "If you ever need help again," he said, with that voice that carried entire highways and silences that said everything, "all you have to do is listen to the road." There were no hugs, no long farewells, because in their world, words are unnecessary when actions have already said it all. They simply mounted up, adjusted the handlebars, and rode off down the road, leaving behind a roar that, far from frightening, filled the air with a strange comfort,
a sound that did not belong to chaos, but to loyalty, a sound that only true brotherhood leaves in its wake as it continues its journey toward other stories that have yet to be told. Some roads lead to redemption, others to memory. And if you want to keep that flame alive, if you want to carry with you the same spirit that unites these men in every mile, the official Hell's Road store is just below, where brotherhood lives beyond the story and becomes part of those who believe in it.
The days passed slowly, peacefully, full of the smell of fresh wood and the silent presence of that which cannot be seen but can be felt. Every time Thomas heard an engine in the distance, he smiled, not because he expected visitors, but because he understood that he was not alone in the world, that even in the deepest darkness there is always a roar ready to break the silence, that there are men who do not seek glory, only justice, and that sometimes family is not blood, but those who show up when the fire destroys everything. This was one of the many forgotten legends of the road. If you want to keep riding through them with us, subscribe to Hell's Road and keep rolling toward the next story.